So we will dive into some fundamentals and what are the core patterns, core behaviors, core questions to ask, and how a person who is afflicted with trauma, how do they behave or how do they respond and how do they rationalize their world, and how we as coaches, healers, and therapists, how do we see that world. So I think it's the balance in these two personalities. That's what it is about. So the quick question here, and I would love to know, is what is your one top value that defines you? One word that comes to your mind as your top value right now, wherever you are. Don't think too much about it. Don't make it too wise or too logical. Whatever comes to you, what is your one top value that defines you? If you can put it in the chat box, and can you all see my, if I just say hello to everyone in a meeting room? Yeah, thank you. Empathetic, justice, empathy. Hello. Yeah. Hi, Lara. Yeah. What else? What else is your one top value that defines you? Integrity and equality, kindness. What else? What else is the word at the moment? What else is your top value? What are you trying to achieve or what are you trying to seek? Happiness. Yeah. Thank you. What else? Yeah. So while you are thinking about it, as you're getting the word connection, balance, and growth, thank you. So as you are updating your values and as you're thinking about it, this is a very transitory word. And this is something that you are seeking at the moment. And once you achieve it, once you realize you achieved it, you will move on. And perhaps, as you talked about your values, peace, health, honesty, integrity, so as you're talking about it, perhaps they are the things that you missed in your past through some of your experiences. And perhaps they are the exact things you wanted to give to others through your journey because you missed it, or you experienced a lack, or you experienced it as something that the world needs because you are not getting it. So that's the reason behind this question. What is your one top value that defines you? Honesty. Yeah, so when you are saying honesty, perhaps it is your experience in the past where someone or something was not honest with you and you were affected and you took a decision that you need honesty in relationships. So probably the real reason behind a value is something that you are seeking yourself and you are wanting it for yourself. And because you're wanting it for yourself, you're giving it out to the world. And whether it is you as a coach or a healer or a therapist or a person who experienced trauma, both the personalities and either of them are doing the same thing but in their own different frameworks. Are you with me when I said this? So, whether it is a person who is afflicted with trauma, or if you are a coach or a therapist, really, besides the experience that what one has gone through and what one is not going through or didn't go through, the mind is the same, it's still working in the same fashion. You're giving out what you want in different degrees. So can you see when I'm saying trauma is really as a healer or a therapist, we are not looking at trauma as such a complicated space. We are looking at the commonalities behind a normal ordinary person who didn't experience it, how do they function, and a person who experienced trauma, how do they function, and we are trying to get the commonalities and we are changing the degrees of that behavior. Are you with me when I just said this? We are changing the degrees of behavior, but the common thread remains the same. And why this common thread is important? Now, for me to know quickly about where you are in your journeys, have you ever experienced trauma? Yes or no? Just leave it in the chat box.
I can't seem to follow. I found it. Look at that.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. So that means we all here who is on the screen, we all experienced trauma to some degree in some form. And it doesn't matter whether we experienced once or whether we are still experiencing it as a memory, we are still responding to that in some form in different degrees, all of us over here. So if you experience trauma, then what is trauma according to you? You can leave it in the chat box. What is trauma? We all experience trauma. So let's just see how we perceive trauma. So, what is trauma according to you from your experiences wherever you are today? A stuck state, an unexpected emotional injury, stuck energy, an event that has not been processed within ourselves. What else? What is trauma? It's in your own words. There is no strong definitions or good or bad, right or wrongs over here. An unwanted event, memories that can't be processed and assimilated. What else? What else? Any other?
Can't find the chat box.
So, Deb, you can't find the chat box. So
No.
right at the so maybe at the bottom, the fifth one. So if you see mute, stop video, security, participants, chat.
No.
No. So I'll
Or you
just
can say it.
Oh, Deb, yeah, feel free to share it if you're not able to access your chat box. So, what is trauma? A painful experience, a mental pain, a painful experience that has not been fully healed. Yeah, body's inability to deal with pain, a perceived negative trapped emotion, bad memories. Yeah, all right. Thank you, everyone. So, can you see how, Deb, do you want to say what is trauma according to you? Feel free to share.
Uh, something you don't feel you can handle, something that was way out of left field, that's nowhere near your normal.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you. Thanks for that, Deb. So the key here is we all experience trauma that taking us back to the unpleasant event in the past. And however, we all have a completely different definition or a different perspective about trauma. For some, it's a memory. For some, it's an unpleasant experience. And for some, it's a stuck energy. So this is our perception and this is how we all are perceiving. But don't we all have different opinions about different things? Just as individuals, if you keep the trauma aside. Yes or no? If it is a yes, give me a thumbs up. All right. So can you see again what we are trying to do is draw the common threads between how a normal person without trauma and a person with trauma, how do they process things, but to different degrees. That's all we are talking about. So now that we just talked about the trauma a little bit, and before we dive into further, so who am I and what is my identity and what am I doing today? So this is my identity and these are the identities I lived in my life. I've been an aspiring engineer because I needed challenge. I need to understand the whys and hows and whats of everything. So I was, and then I realized that everybody is an engineer in India. Every girl is an engineer in India. So I wanted some challenge. And then I thought, okay. And besides being a traditional Indian girl, I decided I want some challenge and moved on and further pursued chartered accountancy. That's totally unknown and that's not very common as I was growing up wherever I was. And that's being rebellious and that's questioning the status quo. And that itself was almost like you're abandoned from everywhere else because you're not just getting married and becoming someone's wife, you're saying you're talking about independence. From that chartered accountancy, I've been an international tax advisor. I've been a certified public accountant. I've worked in US, I worked in UK, and now I'm in Australia and I'm a CPA in all these countries. And then from there, I moved on to be a business advisor where I thought it's more instead of working with different countries and cultures and traveling and living out of suitcase, I thought I should settle in and then I've been a business advisor working with businesses. But why they're all important and what's the common thread? It's not the work, it's not what we do, it's the people involved. And every person, whatever they're doing and whatever behaviors that they're displaying, is a symptom of some experience that they're carrying with them. to different degrees. And me being a very analytical person, if I start reacting to people based on the symptoms that they are displaying, can be anger, can be anxiety, can be panic attacks. If I'm behaving based on that, then I'm truly not understanding the memories that they are carrying, which you and I cannot see with the naked eye. But for some strange reasons, I had that intuition and I always knew there's much more to it. So then, after that, being a business advisor, and from childhood, I've been a spiritual seeker because I come from a religious family, and leveling up is about, and I used to say, I'm not a religious nut, I'm a spiritual fruit. And I took some ego and pride in it to say that. But however, even that spirituality is a label and we transcend beyond religion, we transcend beyond spirituality. And then I thought, okay, I'm a human. And that became my mantra, like I'm a human and I'm standing for humanity. And later I realized even that is a label. It just doesn't matter. And then I pursued and I thought, okay, and throughout my 20 years of career, I'm working with people, coaching them, training them, and I'm understanding and working with minds and I'm giving results. And that was my identity. And then I moved on to become a life and business coach. And as I'm working as a coach, I realized it is so limiting to work just as a coach. It is really limiting to what we can really do for someone else in their lives. And we progress based on our own journeys. From there I thought, okay, I'm an independent woman, so I ticked all the boxes. I'm an independent woman, resilient woman, I can think on my own. And I realized that too is an identity, one that I'm playing. And the truth is, we are truly never independent and we are truly never dependent either. So that's a label too. And from there, I also was a wife and a peacekeeper, and I realized that's another identity I took on in the name of kindness, empathy, keeping the peace, and being submissive and taking everything into your heart and bottling it up while you truly understand what's happening to others. You cannot voice your own thoughts, and that has been my journey. And today, after seeing through those labels, I'm just Mana. Even that healer, thought leader, philosopher, I put that label in there a few months ago, and today even that sounds irrelevant to me. And today I'm just Mana. And whatever that you take me in my conversations with you, that's who I am. There's no label. So that's me in short, and that's what I had to go through in my life. And you may be now asking, what trauma did you go through? You just did some analytical qualifications and you're coming and talking about trauma. But the truth is, I've been through my own trauma of losing a parent at a very young age, being abused, and I had to move away from my home. And I also experienced tsunami and then seen life and death very close. And from there, I had to rebuild my life on my own. I had to build myself on my own. And I couldn't sleep for years, almost till my 28, 29. I couldn't sleep in the night without a light. And from there, I had to, because trauma, nobody talks about it. It's just be strong, be bold, and be courageous. And that's what we say. And I had to work on my own mind and understand what patterns I'm carrying with me. And I had to stand out of that. And I had to work out on my own filters to ensure that I am not perceiving me through my filters and projecting them onto myself of my past. So, doing that, that really helped me in many ways, and my analytical skills really helped me as a chartered accountant, because when you're able to see things, analyzing why that has happened in that format, and if you keep asking why, how, you reach the dead end where you cannot ask any why and a how, and you're pushed to the point you have to accept. You have to accept, and that acceptance is no different from a person who is saying, I'm a spiritual seeker, and we're exactly talking the same thing. You accept and you surrender to the fact. And if we now extrapolate this to trauma person who is afflicted with trauma, it's the same. Or a person who is quite analytical, and I'm calling myself all these identities, how this mind performs is the same as a person who is afflicted with any of these negative emotions. They're performing the same way but to different degrees. So now, why am I connecting these dots and saying to different degrees? Because, and how can I give this result to people? When I'm working with anybody, the key is you have to understand yourself first. If you do not understand the games you play in your own mind, and if you cannot see the excuses, the distractions, the conveniences, the decisions, and the choices you take to validate yourself in your own mind, it is hard to see that in someone else, because you can only see what you know and you can never see what you don't know. And when we are working with people who is experiencing a negative emotion, and then or some of them have experienced trauma, it the mind is always here to protect you, and it will not care whether it is hurting you in the process, because it took a decision to protect you, and that means it can create a disease, and you may be hurt by the disease, but your mind is believing it is protecting you, and that's your creation, but it's hard fact to accept. So in the process, what happened? Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat box. Is the people involved in the work? Sound is fine on my end. Check your settings. Was not sure if it is just me. Hi, Inoka. Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat box. Andy or Chaitu, did you have a chat with Inoka?
Yes. Hi, Manna. Sorry. Yeah, I put my headset on. It's much clearer with the headset.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just checking my volume too, if it's okay. Yeah, my volume is fine. Thank you. All right. All right. So the ego hamster wheel, this is something, if it's very fundamental to understand how a mind functions. And unless we truly understand each and every aspect of this ego hamster wheel, we will not be able to truly help someone, because, as I said, the key is you should be able to understand yourself first. So, in this ego hamster wheel, to keep it very short, we discuss in detail as we go through into the programs, but to keep it short, the universal consciousness is the inherent intelligence and memories accessible to you and I. It is accessible to all of us. Whether you're accessing it or not is a different story. But we all have access to that, just like ocean, it's there. It's there with life. There is death in it, there is life in it, there is different flavor to it, there are different seasons in it, and that's the ocean that is accessible to you and I. That's the universal consciousness, where all the memories, it's almost like a database of memories. That's a universal consciousness which has got that intelligence. You can call it divine intelligence, you can call it higher self or a supreme power, but that universal consciousness is, simply put, analytically speaking, it's a database of memories. From that database of memories, what's happening is, taking an analogy of individual consciousness, if you take a bottle of water from that ocean, is that water completely different from the ocean, or is it still having the elements of ocean in it? Who says it has elements of ocean in it? Yeah, and who says no, it's completely different? Anyone? No. So that individual consciousness, though it's not as big as an ocean in magnitude, that individual consciousness is carrying every memory of that ocean. And having said that, again, using my science background, we are fundamentally protons, electrons, and neutrons. We carry that same energy, though in different objects. From that individual consciousness, what you're carrying, sorry, not sure, elements of ocean, same water, thank you. So from there, what we are doing, so imagine here that a child is born and this is you, and you have access to all this universal consciousness, and you are born, and that's where your individual consciousness comes into picture, and with that individual consciousness comes the intellect too. But where does this intellect come from? You're born, just born, and you're already born with some inherent intelligence. Where is that intellect coming from? That intellect is your biomemory. And that biomemory is not necessarily your memory. It can be your parents' memories, it can be your ancestral memories, it can be your parents' friends' memories that your parents were storing and you got it through. So it can be a biomemory. And that biomemory is not necessarily your memory. Are you with me when I'm saying this? But what happens in a typical regular therapies, or even I've done regressions and timelines, and what happens is we connect to those memories as my memory. We connect to those, whatever, call it past life, because it's not necessarily your past life. It can be a memory of someone that you're carrying with you. It can be my great grandfather's best friend who passed away with something, can be a memory that I'm carrying with me. And when I access my subconscious, I may get those memories, but those memories are not necessarily my memories. Then what is the problem? The problem is, we in this lifetime, we believe that every past life memory, for example, for argument's sake, I'm saying past life because it can be anybody's lives. It can be someone totally unrelated. You heard something somewhere and that's in your memory, and you will pass it on as a bio memory, as if that is the point of conception. And at that point of time, what happens is an individual who is afflicted with trauma, they fabricate that memory and they connect or they associate themselves to that memory and they believe it's my memory. And because of that memory or because of that experience that I had to go through, so they connect the mind and they say this is why this is happening. So that's the place where this intellect is playing a role. Are you with me when I'm talking about the intellect and the biomemory here? Yep. All right. So now, how this intellect, so with this intellect, you're born with your biomemory, and then imagine that child who is born with this basic intellect, who is stepping into this world, is experiencing something. Say that experience is stumbling on something rough and long and thick in the dark. Imagine that is the experience. At that point of time, this experience is quite an innocent experience because that has no emotion or feeling attached to it. It's just an experience. But what happens from the experience is when that experience is first processed by your five senses. Even before your mind, it's your five senses that are getting affected by the experience. So did you connect these dots, the experience and the five senses? Because that's the key when we are working with someone to rapidly heal the trauma, because any experience is first perceived through the five senses, and that's when the mind is even coming into the picture. And because it is first hitting your five senses, so you're either seeing it, listening it, tasting it, feeling it, whatever that is happening over there, it is becoming a physical memory. The moment you see it, it's a physical memory. And based on that physical memory, then it is sending it to the mind and saying, right, this is what we are seeing outside. So this is how it was. It was rough, it was thick, it was long. What do you think that is? And the mind is taking this data, processing it, and it is saying, okay, right, let me use my own thinking. And what can be long, thick, and rough in the dark? It can think it's a snake because it's a perception, or you can rely on your inference saying that cause and an effect. So maybe the door is open and there's something that crawled in, or someone came in and they must have left a rope. Or you will rely on the source, and you would have that means you're saying by relying on the source that okay, so something in the past like this has happened. You connect the dots and you make your own judgment out there. So you can rely on any of these. You can rely on your own original thought, or you are inferring that, saying that there's a cause and an effect, or effect and a cause, or you're relying on the source and you're creating your knowledge and memory. As you create your knowledge and memory, you're also ignoring and forgetting so many various other things. And most of the times, when someone is experiencing negative emotions, or when someone is getting stuck in that energy, as we call it, that's because they're only focusing on what they think they know and what they believe they remember, but they're not focusing on what they have forgotten or the other factors that they're ignoring. And that is their reality. And as a result of that reality, what happens is there is a thought or there is a desire. So, right now, this person who experienced a dark thing in the night, a long, rough, dark in the darkness, perceived or chosen to decide or chosen to believe it's a snake. And once they believe that, then comes the thoughts. Oh, then it's a snake, and how it felt, and how what could have happened, how dangerous it could be, and that's a thought. And again, you have an opportunity to observe the thought, but the human mind is naturally inclined to connect, to associate with it. And that human mind will associate with the thought, and then comes the irrational fear or the irrational worry. So when we are thinking and when we are having thoughts, as long as there is a thought, you can observe the thought, but we don't observe the thought, we own the thought, we become the thought. And as a result of becoming the thought, you're further now deciding to act on it, think further about it, or say something about it. And if you didn't go into that room next morning to find out it's just a rope and not a snake, that can be your story for life, that you did touch a snake in the darkness, and that becomes a layer added to your individual consciousness or ego or your identity. So this simple understanding of how many ways we are recreating experiences and memories, and also the fact that the faculty to understand that the things that you think you remember are not necessarily your actual memories, they can be fabricated memories. Because if someone says that you were very immature in your teenage, Sarah, and you would say, no, I would have never done that. With my mindset and whatever I was, I would have never been so immature. I will be much more kinder, but perhaps you were immature. I was immature. But our ego at this point, our identity, will not allow us to think anything lower than the standards we set for ourselves today. Are you with me when I just said this? Because it's a hard fact for many to accept that we fabricate our memories. But as a coach or a therapist, we cannot tell our client that they're fabricating memories because it is their truth, it is their reality. But we should be able to understand the possibility of fabricating a memory. And if you are resistant to the fact that you can fabricate your memories and you can use it to your convenience to protect yourself, you will never be able to see this in others. So, and that's the reason why you should be able to experience your own emotions, your memories, and see the mind, the games that the mind plays with you, and the things that you are not seeing beyond that knowledge and beyond what you remember. And once you experience what you're capable of, once you experience, in order to protect yourself, how much you're capable of hurting yourself, once you experience that quality of mind and quality of the body, that's when someone is coming to you for help, you will be able to see them literally in minutes. So when I'm saying I'm able to rapidly heal trauma, and just because I am not saying I'm going to take months or years or so many sessions, it is contradicting the common knowledge. But the truth is, the time you take to really help someone to resolve the trauma is your filter. It's about knowing yourself, it's about understanding your own mind. That's the time it takes to truly see someone else and resolve it. So why we say it is not a talking therapy is because the truth is the memory is a memory and you do not need any story. Unless you believe in talking and unless you believe in sharing a story. So if you are believing that it should be heard, and if that is your need to be heard, again, that's your filter, because if you were not heard growing up, then that becomes your top value, to be seen, to be heard, to be understood. And once that is your filter, you superimpose it onto the other person and you believe they should be heard. But the truth is, perhaps they don't need that. All they need is to access that memory and release it. And the memory, the first one is a biomemory, and the second is a physical memory, and only after that you're creating a mental memory. So when you're focusing on talking to people, you're totally focusing on the mental memory and you're unpacking the story after story after story. But The root cause is already over here and you're not even accessing that information there. And because you're not focusing on the top layer of this journey, you're focusing over here. What's your knowledge of the story? What's your memory of your experience? What did you make? What meaning did you make out of it? How are you seeing it? How is your brain changing? So you're working on this bottom layer of this ego hamster wheel, and that's why you take so much time, because you are focusing on the knowledge and memory, which is already polluted with these three: perceptions, inference, and relying on source, because you already started making a meaning and you created a memory and knowledge, and you're also ignoring certain things and forgetting certain things. So if you're focusing on these areas, that is where your cognitive behavior therapy, your language, they all play a role over here. Positive psychology, that means you're operating at this level of perception, inference, relying, knowledge, memory, thought, or a desire. And you can also use meditation as a tool because you're owning the thought. And that's a long process, because unless you sit with the thought, you cannot understand that you are not the thought. And you will not realize you cannot still the thought. So can you see the tools that you are applying to resolve somebody's trauma? You're functioning over here, forgetting there's a biomemory and a physical memory which needs no story, which absolutely needs no details. And people can forget the details, it's okay, but you can resolve it in less than, and then on the clock, I can tell you within 7 minutes, I will find that. Because of that, if you can find it in 7 minutes, you can resolve it in 30 minutes. One at a time. All right. So in short, that's the ego hamster wheel, and we take each topic quite in detail, like it's almost like a day's workshop just on this ego hamster wheel, and we understand this in detail. But in short, if you can understand this, and if you can choose to function at a biomemory and a physical memory level as the first point to hit when someone is experiencing severe anxiety, depression, panic attacks, trauma, or poor relationships, pretty much you will be able to resolve 80 to 90% of the problem, and then remains the subtle memories and subtle emotions, which you can use your CBT, positive psychology, or any other language tools. You can use that, because yeah, anyway, I'll leave it at that, otherwise it's going to be another conversation. So are you with me as we are talking about this ego hamster wheel? Yeah, all right. So I'm just trying to just look at on the screen. So just give me a hands up one more time. And if anybody, if you're thinking it's too much, I'll stop the pace or reduce the pace. All right. Okay. Jenny, you seem to have raised your hand. Oh, okay. You just said yes. Thank you, Jenny. All right. Okay. Now, so from ego hamster, we'll move into this aspect of why many coaches, therapists, and healers, they're working on themselves for years and years. They're working and they're living in this space for so many years, as much as people afflicted with trauma, anxiety, or depression, as much as they are spending time for years and decades in that experience. Coaches with qualifications also are spending resolving their own issues for years and years. And still they're failing. Why do you think they're failing the clients? One, as I talked about the ego hamster wheel, the areas you focus. The reasons. Number one is the fear. And believe it or not, most of the coaches and therapists, they fear to be wrong. They fear being found out. They fear pushing the boundary of thoughts. They fear pushing the boundary of mental and social constructs. And as long as you're operating in the man-made social construct, and if you are not able to push the boundary in your own mind, you will not be able to see what the other mind is capable of. Because the only difference between a person who didn't experience trauma and a person who experienced trauma is that they are capable of pushing that boundaries beyond social constructs, because they have to protect themselves. And in the process, however, whatever happens that can give them the comfort, irrespective of the fact they may be creating a disease, or they may be creating something else in the body, or they may be seeking some extramarital affairs, or whatever that is happening in that space, it is the fear. So if you are living a protected life within your social constructs, how can you ever explore the mind of the other person who is already pushed to push the boundaries of social construct or a mental construct? So fear. So that's the reason. So in order to overcome the fear, you should be able to know yourself, and you should be able to understand, how am I camouflaging what I do? How am I camouflaging my emotions and experiences in such a way that it is socially acceptable? Are you with me when I'm just talking about the fear aspect and the social construct? Now, the second aspect is the personal identity. So here I'm very specific about saying it's a personal identity, because the reason is we all have two identities. The identity we think we are into the society, and there is another identity which you think you want to keep it sane for yourself. And perhaps that can be, if you are believing that, you know what, I didn't experience kindness growing up. People have never been kind to me, so I will be kind. And if you create your identity of a kind person to yourself, and the same kindness, which is according to the social construct, which is a good thing, becomes destructive because you overplay it. And that becomes your personal identity of being a kind person, so much so that you are validating yourself constantly, and you are not able to cross the boundary of kindness. So when someone traumatic with traumatic experiences, when they come to you, and if you are starting your journey from empathy or kindness, perhaps that's not what they need. It's not kindness and empathy they need. And if you're coming from an aspect of be seen, be heard, and be understood, if that's your motto because you didn't get that validation and you were not heard, and that's what you are after, that creating opportunities for people to be heard, to be seen, to be understood, then you are not able to cross that boundary of your own personal identity, you to you. But perhaps the person who is coming to you needs much more than that, and they don't want to be seen, be heard, or be understood. They just need to overcome this traumatic memory. So you can spend years and years by giving the opportunity as what you think according to the social construct based on your personal identity to yourself. That is where we talk about guilt, conscience, and true to be yourself. So we overuse authenticity, we overuse being true to yourself. Then the third one is a social construct. Social construct, as a coach or a healer or a therapist, or even I call myself a little bit of philosopher, because the social constructs are created for our convenience, but they are not everything. And a person who is pushed beyond that with negative experiences or some traumatic experiences, they're naturally operating out of the social constructs, but they're trying to be confined by those social constructs. And if you have strong definitions of values, morals, and what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad, what is respect, what is family, what is love, if that is your social construct, how can you ever see the other person where they're coming from? What if you're putting everything into the bucket of love? Or what if you're putting everything into the bucket of empathy? So it is important for us in our own journey as coaches, healers, and therapists to question those social constructs. And in order to question the social construct, it's not an easy journey, because you should be ready to lose certain things. You should overcome the mental fear of losing your friends and your family in order to truly experience those social constructs. And the fourth one is focus and attention. You don't believe how often and how many times I reiterate on this. People are communicating to you constantly. They're communicating to you, not just using language. But if you are focused on your filters, on your social constructs, on your personal identity, I am so and so, this is my way, I don't have a way, you guide me. When you are focused on your motto, and you're focusing on your niche, and you're focusing on what is important to you or what you think is important, you're missing the clues. And I say that in my group coaching sessions, when people are saying it, I'll say, did you observe that? They gave you a word, they gave you a gesture, they're talking to you. You cannot not see it, provided you choose to focus on seeing it as it is. But we are constantly using our references and research material to connect the dots, and we are focusing a lot on relying on the source. Or this author says this philosopher says this book says this technique says this. But unless you come out of that framework and you focus on your client and see them as they are and not as how you want to see them, or you already put them mentally, even without seeing them, you already have your framework about someone. So the key is they have these challenges because of these 4 filters. And this is the key challenge. So before I move on to the next one, is everybody on page with this conversation?
Hold
All right. So now moving on to the next one. This is a testimonial, and I will share this story with you. So can you just let me know if you are able to listen to this volume?
I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for my heart
Thank
for
you.
everything you have done for me. You have given me my health back, my peace. You have gave me a new way of living my life. My family is excited to see me again doing the things that I used to enjoy doing. Life is waiting for me, and what you have done is priceless. I cannot pay in any form what you have done for me is extraordinary, and it's more than any doctor, any pill, any therapist, any modality has been able to do. I don't feel anxiety. I don't feel depressed at all now. It is unbelievable. I suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, and phobias since the age of 20, and it got worse in 2003 after a car accident. I was almost homebound. I have tried counseling, cognitive behavioral therapy, acupuncture, pills, hypnosis, different kind of things, and so far it did not help much. My question was to her, are you sure that you can help me? And she said, absolutely. And then I knew that I have to trust with all my heart in order to help. I was a little skeptical. However, I ran out of options. I did not have to go through explaining about my past, relieving the pain, relieving the suffering, talking or turning. She was giving me very simple instructions that I could follow, and a lot of the subconscious emotions that were memories that were stored in my body resurfaced, and she was able to give me instructions, and within 30 minutes I start feeling the breakthrough. The most important was I felt present for the first time in years, because before I was walking like a zombie doing my daily thing, but I wasn't present. So I felt present. Then I felt euphoria. It was like a big heavy load was lifted off my back. My heart was light. My mind was clear. It was like clear waters. For the first time, I felt confident. I felt happy. And it was just extraordinary. I could not understand how did she do it in less than an hour. I cannot describe how happy I am for the outcome. And anyone that is suffering, anyone that's going through any mental issues, any obstacles that they might have to live a very fulfilled, happy, joyful life, they need to make a phone call. They need to meet her. They need to experience for themselves freedom.
Thank you for watching that. And that's the story where We are not taking testimonials, or we are not giving any scripts to anybody. Those are absolutely against my ethics and values. And not many people would love to share or like to share their past or the experiences. But on record, thank you, Florina, for agreeing to share your feedback. Thank you so much for that. And the story is, that's the story of a young woman who left her country by boat, and she had to swim in the ocean to the boat, and she had to lose her friends, two best friends, dying in that swim from her place to the boat. She had to leave them behind, be a migrant, and then she was abused, and then she got stuck in a building with the poisonous gases. And from there, she had to rebuild her life when she landed in US, and again she experienced physical abuse. And from there, she had to build her life, and she lived, as she said, from 20 till this point of time. So I cannot classify that as a minor trauma, complex trauma, or I cannot classify that, because the truth is, one lady lived that life and she experienced it. And what we are saying here, when I'm saying trauma is not a complicated knot, for her, it is a very complicated knot because she had to live through it and live every day. But if you are able to clear your filters, and if you surpass and if you push the boundaries of your kindness and empathy, then you can really see the structure of the mind and how it is forming these patterns, and you can resolve it, and you can give that relief to your clients. So the key to really give a relief to your client is not with your ego or your qualification or a degree, but though we need them, the resolution or the help that you're giving to others is through understanding yourself. Is only through that. And anybody who is ready to explore themselves, who is ready to understand themselves, that's what I say, beyond qualifications, this is the quality that we need. And that's this EMPR method the program is all about, is facilitating you to understand yourself and see through yourself and your own filters. All right. So that's the story of Florina, and I'm really grateful to her for doing that. Now, 3 keys to remember when you're working with someone who experienced something drastic like that is to understand you don't heal trauma. Trauma is as simple as your mom said no to you when you wanted a chocolate as a child. And a severe trauma, both of them create a similar patterns in the mind. And you don't know whether a simple no in that situation connected to the biomemory carried from lives, or it's a simple no in this lifetime. You don't know. So how can you ever classify that something is to be healed? What if it's simply a matter of ensuring that we can work without ego and attachment, and we can help them to see that and then resolve it? What if it is only that? So, number 1 to remember, we don't heal trauma. 2, post-traumatic stress is not an injury, it's not a wound or a disorder or a disease for you to heal or resolve. Because the moment we think we are coaches, we are therapists, and we are counselors, or we are healers, the moment we think we go, the very reason I said I'm not a healer is because I'm not healing anybody. It's simply understanding the person, and the moment you understand that person, they can understand themselves, and they're resolving it on their own. So the key is I am changing and to facilitate the change for the other person. So I'm not healing. So number 2 to remember, it's not an injury, wound, disorder, or a disease for you to heal or resolve. And the 3 is it's like memory, like any other experience. And as a coach, healer, or therapist, it's important to stay in this zone to understand it's a memory like any other experience, and you don't have to project your filters onto them. And when I'm saying you project your filters onto them, it's not by talking, it's not by communicating who you are, it's not by saying it, by being, you're already communicating to them. Did you get this when I said this? Just by being, you're already communicating that to them. So that's why that being is very important, who you are, without that filters. I can see some chats coming up. I will look into the chat just after this. And then the 3 common myths: change is a slow process. because we buy into so many things without our knowledge. And if you are believing change is a slow process, maybe true, may not be true, it is irrelevant. But if you are believing it's a slow process, then it is a slow process for the other person too. And brain is the control center. Brain may be the control center, but you also have to remember brain is a reaction center. And when people create, people manifest different things in their bodies, in their world, in their relationships, brain is reacting and it's not necessarily controlling. So you can go into research and logic and facts and evidences of how brain is responding and how brain is looking at it. But the truth is, if I see a color red, my eyes will recognize it's a color red. So my eye is not a control center. It is what it is. And the third is we focus on, and most of us, all of us start our journey with that saying mindset, priming our mindset, having routines, having rituals, having journals. We all focus on to be in the right mindset. But the truth is, how can you be in the right mindset when you are bogged down with these memories that you don't know yet? And how much do you want to push yourself and how much do you want to push your client to be in that mindset when they're not resolving those memories? How many goals can you set and how many things you will ask them to push and move and do? So the key is to understand mindset is also an outcome. As much as you want to put an effort to be in that mindset of, achieving it, doing it, and being positive. So it's not about remembering all the good things about a situation. It's not about giving a tool to remember and be grateful for everything that's happening around you when you're feeling sad. That can be a tool, but to truly give resolution or to truly help someone, you should be able to see beyond mindset, beyond brain, and beyond change. Now, there are 4 behavioral categories when you're working with a client. One is a rational category, where you would sometimes be shocked to think, oh, they're quite organized, they're very logical, they plan out everything, and that's how they're behaving. So how come they have these negative symptoms? We can't even comprehend that they were going through depression or sadness. Has anyone experienced that? That rational behavior and still going through depression and sadness behind? Did anyone come across friends and relatives that form? So that's a rational behavior, and just because they are rational, you don't know if they're avoiding certain things by being logical. Maybe they don't want to be certain way, or they don't want to do things certain way, or they don't want to be seen in a certain way, and that's exactly what they're avoiding by being very rational and very practical. And the second behavior is irrational, where you irrationally you worry about it. And then I had a client, and when I was talking to her, she had this irrational fear of cats and dogs. And when you actually go through the fear of cats and fear of dogs, you can just think of it as a trauma, but it's much deeper than that. So it's not the cat, it's not the dog, it's what's beneath that, what's the association with the cat and the dog. So it's about the irrational behavior, and it's easy for us to work on phobia. We'll say it's a rational behavior or an irrational behavior, but it's much, much deeper than that. If someone experienced abuse and if they are associating that with cats and dogs, it's not the fear of cat and a dog that will attack them. It's much deeper than that. It's the memories that they cannot even consciously bring to the surface. So that's irrational fear, irrational worry, irrational behaviors. The third is voluntary. If anybody is in need of help, you're volunteering to help. You're volunteering to do something for someone. You're volunteering to take care of your family. Because you're doing either two things. You're avoiding something, or you want to gain something, or you want to be seen in certain way, or you don't want to be seen in certain way. So you're putting your hand up and you're attracting more and more and more opportunities to fulfill that underlying need by volunteering for everything. And after a point, you get to a point where you cannot come out of your volunteering and you're stuck. And you fabricate your memories of trauma. And again, that's the spiral you go through. The fourth is an involuntary behavior, where you don't even know when something happens, you're already upset. When something happens, you're already sad. Or when someone is in need, you're already jumping in and you're helping them out. And only after 3 months or 4 months, you realize, by the way, how did I get here? but you already did it. So that's an instant involuntary response. So these are the 4 behavioral categories that you would be observing in a client. And for you to understand that, and if you are stuck with your filter, say if you are all about logic and facts and evidences, and what if a person is totally irrational? And probably you may be trying to bring them into rational thinking because you are a rational person. But what if you have to become irrational to work with an irrational fear or irrational behavior? Could you see the conflict? So it's never about bringing them according to your idea or your model of the world. But we don't consciously do that. As a coaches and therapists, we all know hand on heart that we are not bringing them into our direction. We are working with them. But it's not the conscious behavior, it's the subconscious behavior of how you're directing them to come into your way because you believe it is right. So it's about transcending those filters and working with different behavioral categories. So be involuntary with involuntary, be voluntary with voluntary. So it's your flexibility. And you can be that flexible only when you fear nothing. Only you don't fear that you have something to lose. Only if you are not too stuck to your identity, that's when you will be able to be flexible. Then the next one, the polarities and the core questions. These are the 4 fundamental ways that someone is creating or forming those memories and experiences. These are the 4 fundamental ways, and there's nothing really beyond that. And by just asking these 4 questions, you are able to tap into what is really stopping them. Because the truth is, memory is fabricated, knowledge is fabricated too. So the key is, as much as you and I are too focused on subconscious, you are creating the subconscious right now by fabricating it. So subconscious is not an iceberg under the water. Subconscious is who you are today and what are you fabricating it. So these are the 4 things, and that keeps changing day by day. So what do you gain by gaining this? So if you think I will gain someone's attention by doing so and so, I will do it. It is irrelevant whether it is rational or irrational. That's nature of the mind, and this is how a person who is affected with any of these negative emotions or trauma typically thinks. The second one is, what will I lose by gaining this? And to that extent, people will lose loving relationships in order to gain their so-called independence. What am I prepared to lose to gain this? What am I prepared to gain by losing this? And that means there's a story, it's not a story, it's a true story of a person who decided that she has to create a degenerative disease because she didn't have children and she needed validation from her family, and because of the culture where she comes from, she didn't have children, so she believed that family will outcast her, so she has to create another mechanism where that will give her attention, so she creates a disease. So what do I gain by losing my health? And if that is the validation I'm after, I'll create it. That's the possibility of the mind. The 4th one is, what do I lose by losing this? So if you can look at these 4 factors, and if you can function in this spectrum, and if you can see what is this person trying to gain by doing this or lose by doing this, or what are they trying to gain by losing this, or what are they trying to lose by losing this? Sometimes, even this morning I had a session, and one of the clients, he's so absolutely rich and he could make millions and millions of dollars, but he believed, if I am rich, I will lose my friends. So because I'm afraid of losing my friends by making money and becoming rich, he decided never to be rich, and he will always be losing his money. It's a mental game. That's the symptom of a very deeper trauma. So can you see, by just focusing on these 4 polarities, you will pretty much find out in less than 7 to 10 minutes what is stopping them. And you can hit that straight away. And you can access that memory straight away without going into any details. Are you with me with these polarities and the 4 core questions? Right. Now, So 90 seconds is all it takes to identify an emotion and dissipate it while just simply noticing it. Because the nature of the mind is where you focus on, that will come into the light and that will be resolved. And if your mind is not focusing on that, you can never resolve it. And we have so many memories, so many subconscious decisions and beliefs and memories in our minds that if we don't see it, we cannot resolve it. But why I am saying it is a rapid healing technique? Because if you can access that memory within these 4 questions and whatever framework we are talking about, and many more frameworks and models that I will be introducing, if you can access that, out of all these memories and past lives and ancestrals and biomemories and physical memories and mental memories, if you are able to pick that for that specific situation, because most 9 out of 10 times people are communicating and they're ready to change, it's you who is not seeing it. Otherwise, they would not come to you. And if you are able to do that, 90 seconds, that's when you will release that emotion. If you are quick enough to tap into that memory, if you are quick enough to tap into that block. But the time it takes is the time it takes for you to find it. The moment you find it, they will unblock it. So, changing your perception changes your DNA, and that's where I say brain is not always the control center. If you want to go on logistics and data, that's right, that's another social construct. You can accumulate a lot of knowledge, but the truth is it's a simple understanding of what is happening here. And I say that this is not a talking therapy because I don't have to, as I already emphasized on memories, and memories do not necessarily have to have details and accurate data. You may completely forget it. That's okay. And you don't have to talk about it. That's okay too. If you can understand these 3 aspects of becoming, being, and unbecoming, and that's the framework behind the EMPR method of understanding how you became who you are. Why do I have this hairstyle? Why do I see in this way? Why do I put my hand under the chin? If I can understand the reasons behind what I am doing myself, and I can understand how I became who I am and how you have become who you are, if you're able to understand that, and if you can understand as a result of that, what are all the symptoms that you are displaying in this lifetime? Why do you choose this way of life? Why do you be that way? Why do you go there? Why do you speak to these people? If you are able to understand your being, and that's where we call it internal manifestations, physical manifestations, and external manifestations, because we manifest people around, we manifest work environments, we manifest everything inside our bodies, and we manifest everything inside our minds because of who we have become. That becoming is the key. That's the secret code. Once you understand that, you will understand the being and how many ways people are displaying it. It's just not body language, because body language is, you can easily manipulate with the body language. But if you understand the being and becoming, and if you can understand how you can unbecome from your own patterns, from your own strong judgments, from your own ego and attachments, and from your own fears, if you can understand how to unbecome, that's the key to understand someone. So when I say it's about rapidly healing trauma, the result may be in 7 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour to resolve one specific traumatic memory, but it's the work that happens behind in understanding yourself and the depth into which you go to understand yourself and your mind and the mind, not only your mind and the behavior of the mind and behavior of body. That's the work behind that plays a role in you giving that result to someone. And then that's, in short, that's the ego hamster wheel, and these are the points of observations. And then here is another testimonial, and sorry about that.
However, Mana discovered this process is a miracle and it works. And I've certainly got I did have a lot of grief that I was holding on to through child abuse. And it's been really peaceful since I've offloaded that. I find that's a bit of a miracle, really, because I've been holding on to that most of my life, but I feel quite free compared to where I was before I did the session. It's mostly subconscious grief that you hold on to and you carry around as a burden, and it would just impact on your day. It would stop you from living your life, loving your life. It stops you from having good relationships. Every facet of your life comes down to what you're holding within you, yourself. And I don't think until you start to feel better, you don't really realise. Approximately 3 hours session each time over 3 weeks, and it was a miracle. And that was that. It was done and dusted. Who would have believed that could happen? But it did. Personally, I think from the first session you get some relief, and every time I had a session, more and more was being offloaded. So even one session was incredible. Well, it's a lot more unstressed, but my anxiety is not a huge issue. I'm sleeping better. But mostly I think I'm not carrying around that burden, which was weighing me down. She is amazing. And to think that in that short a time, what she achieved for me was probably about 50 counselling sessions or more. So I couldn't thank you enough. There's not a big enough word for it. Feeling where I am now, it's nothing compared to what I've paid all those years in counselling and to the benefits that you get. And I'll carry those benefits. I'll carry it for the rest of my life. And it's a miracle.
Thank you. All right. And that's another story of a person who carried trauma for almost 40 years of her life. And then I wanted to test this out because I normally ask for 6 sessions where trauma, pretty much we work on the major trauma in the very first session and subtle emotions in the next 2 sessions, and then we rebuild. And then I thought I had to try it out and see if I can actually do it as a 9-hour session for people, and if I can give the result as a group. And that was possible, and that's the testimonial from that experiment that we did in how we can heal trauma. So I did 1 session one-on-one, and then we took them into these 9-hour sessions, and then we released trauma as a group. So we can also work in that way. So I think that's all from me about the EMPR. And EMPR stands for Emotion Memory Pattern Release Method. And I'm the founder, and this is my technique. And the reason why we are talking about this EMPR method is when I'm inundated with work and people ask me, is there someone where I can go to? I don't have anybody where I say, go to this person. The reason is it's not about the technique. What is really involved is in understanding the becoming and being and unbecoming. And unless we understand the quality of a person in that framework, it's hard for me to say go to this person, because you're really dealing with extreme sensitive information here. And most of the times we are playing the role of a confession. That's the role we are playing. And for someone to truly tap into their own deepest, darkest secrets so quick in 1 session, you're not taking time to understand them. You're able to get that in 1 session. And to do that, you really need a good quality of mind and body and that willingness to be there. And that's why we are now focusing on creating EMPR practitioners, so I know them and we work together. And some of you are already in the audience today. Belinda, Tanya, thank you for being with us, and thank you for joining, and I'm really so looking forward to this. So that's the whole idea behind EMPR method. And if you do want to know more about EMPR method, we will send you a follow-up email where you can book a time with Andy Keating. There you go. And you can have a chat with him, and you can ask any questions you have about the program, what is involved, all the details you can get from Andy. And then I'm now quickly looking into the chats, and I'm seeing, wow, thank you. That's a lot to read. Thank you. Bio plus senses is physical memory. Thank you, Lara. I'm trying to see if they, and if you have any questions for me, please do drop them in the chat box and I'll ensure that I address each and every one of them. May sound so very low. So yeah, as I'm just going through the chats, please do drop in any questions you have for me or anything you want to know more, and I'll make an effort to get there all in the work. Generational trauma. Yes, true. And that's where we do talk about trauma bonding, but it's much more deeper than that. Yes, experiences are perceived before it even hits the mind. Yeah, by your senses. Thank you. Over identifying, because we are putting our own lens over other person's experiences. That's right, Jenny. Mindset, set mind. That's true. I like that. I saw it in myself. With when we act less irrationally, yeah. We have the power to choose who and how we want to be. Yeah, self-discovery. Thank you. All right, so I'll stop sharing now. And any questions, anybody? Anything that has come up to date? How long lasting is the treatment? To date, 4 to 5 years is my experience. And I do ensure that I am in touch with people, because I need to know if there is any relapse or what is happening in that space. So, and we are purely working on memories. So that's the information I can give you. And as I go forward, I myself am keen and collecting the data. All right. Any other questions for me? No? Oh, hi, Bobby. Thanks for joining in. Oh, Jenny.
Mana, just Jenny has asked a question there. Does it work if we can't fully remember our trauma or if it happened over a number of years?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Does it work if we can't fully remember our trauma? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that's why it's not a talking therapy, and your memories do not need to have any details. And the truth is, 9 out of 10 times, people don't remember the actual details of any memory. And because we are not going into the details of events and experiences, you really don't need that. If you think something has happened in your life, or if you know that you did experience something traumatic, and we can work with it, because you really don't need that. Because the truth is, people with absolute memory issues that they forget almost to the point of their age 15 or age 16, they say that I don't have any memory for the first 15 years of my life, and I don't know, something happened, but something definitely happened. And I have case studies of those that kind of history as well, where they don't have any physical memory. They don't even know what they did, what happened in the childhood for 13 years, 14 years. And when they come to me with this specific incidents, they access those memories without any details, and you can help with them. You can help them. Yes, Jenny. So I hope I answered you. Can you recommend how many sessions someone would need to achieve permanent results? Thank you, Lara. So I take 6 sessions, and 3 sessions exclusively I need to work on. 1 session to work on the major trauma, 2 more sessions to work on the subtle emotions that comes up and everything else that is associated with it. So we release the major blocks, and then we also work on rebuilding their identity and values, and before they step in and say they don't have the trauma anymore. So 6 sessions in total with me, and each session lasting for 90 minutes, if that explains.
Yeah, Mana, I think what Laura's just asking there as well is, when you mentioned about it, she asked how long does it last, and you said 5 years. Do you mean 5 years to date?
No,
Because that's
sorry.
how long it's been, the process is going.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, Lara says what time frame for each session and at what frequency? So 6 sessions over 6 weeks. And sometimes the last 3 sessions I may take over 15 days or a month, based on where they are in their journey. But usually, as you heard from the testimonials, from the very first session, they get the relief. And everything else that they are not accessing it because of this major trauma or major traumatic memory, that will come up once they release this major trauma. And that's where the first 3 sessions to work with trauma and the last 3 sessions to rebuild them. So, and I meet frequency is a week, 6 weeks. Thank you. Who covers people who train in this for insurance purposes? Thank you, Tina, for asking that. So the key is, we, in this process, there's really no, because I'm not insurance covered. So this is an alternate therapy and people are getting the results. So yes, I am covered by insurance therapy, sure, and they are covering us. So but we don't have Medicare benefits because we are working in this alternate therapy sector. And to that, nobody has had any recurring trauma triggers. That's right. Do we learn the training ourselves too to help it others, or is it just for ourselves? All right. So thank you. I really love the questions. Thank you for that. Because those are the details. Because the idea behind this session is, again, as I said, my idea here is not to make it any commercial. It's like if it is truly your calling, you will find it. That's the whole idea. And that's why I said if you want to know more details, you can book a session with Andy and he will give you the details. But the EMPR method, the program, is for 12 months. And I designed it in such a way that it is 2 days or 3 days a month. That's all you're doing it, because this is an experience. You have to learn, live it, experience it, and come back with your feedback. Because I can easily teach you and make my job easy by just doing it in 15 days or 18 days at a stretch. But by doing that, I will not be helping you, because you have to access your own mind and understand what is happening there. And that is only possible when you allow time and space for your mind to access those deeper corners. So it's a 12 months program, and I'm your teacher, and I will teach you the EMPR method. And it's the first 6 months is about becoming, being, and unbecoming, which is absolutely about going through your own journey. And the last 6 months is where you work with the clients and you get your case studies, and I'm going to help you to give that result. You get the result, and then at the end of 12 months, that's when, only after you giving that result, I'll be certifying you as an EMPR practitioner. So 6 months of focusing on yourself, 6 months of applying this knowledge on your clients, and I will help you there, and I'm hand holding you and guiding you, and then you're getting this EMPR certification. So that's about the program, and I will teach you. Then next, we are covered in this therapy. Yes, we are covered by IICT and also by Therapy Show. We are covered. We are covered. How many months? Sorry, I didn't hear. 12 months. All right. All right. Okay then. So I think thank you for your time. And if you don't have any more questions, I'm happy to call it a day. So any questions? One last opportunity. Any questions for me? Anything you want to know more? No? All right. Okay. So thank you everyone for taking time today. Thank you for joining. And if you ever want to know something more, or if you just want to keep in touch, please reach out, and I'm always here. So thank you. Love you all. Have a good evening, good day, wherever you are. Thank you. Bye-bye.